The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus spoke to his disciples. There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth distress among nations, confused by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud, with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Be on guard, so that your hearts are not weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of this life, and that day catch you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all who live on the face of the whole earth. Be alert at all times. Pray that you may have the strength to escape all these things that will take place and to stand before the Son of Man. The Gospel of the Lord. The Gospel says, keep awake. It'd be hard not to at this temperature. I'm not sure what's going on, but anyway, we'll try to find out. Today we celebrate the beginning of a new church year, the first Sunday of Advent. Advent comes from a Latin word, literally means towards the coming. And so this is a season, about 4 weeks in length, that looks towards the coming of the Messiah. It looks toward it in two different ways. Historically, commemorating the waiting of Israel for the first coming of the Messiah, and in a second way, looking ahead to the future, to Christ's return in judgment at the end of time. Our first reading from the prophet Jeremiah is part of our reliving the expectation of Israel, waiting for the coming of their Messiah. And we have to keep in mind when Jeremiah spoke these words, they were hard times for the people of Judah. The kingdoms of Israel, about 120 years earlier, had been scattered and never came back. Already, some of the people of Judah had been carried to Babylon, and they wondered if they'd ever be seen again. And the others wondered what was coming. And Jeremiah speaks in God's name a promise. The days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will fulfill the promise I made to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. Think of it, the house of Israel gone for 130 years. The house of Judah partly carried off and the rest wondering when their turn would come. In those days and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch to spring up for David. A branch from the line, the kings of David, to rise up. And in those days, Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will live in safety. And the city will be called, the Lord is our righteousness. And in our gospel, we see the looking forward, the expectation to Christ's return in judgment at the end of time. Again, as we've seen several times over the past several weeks, we have the quote from the book of Daniel. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And so we live in this time remembering and preparing for the solemn commemoration at Christmas of the Messiah's first coming, and yet knowing that someday, and a time known only to the Father, he will return in judgment. And our advice for that is to keep awake, be alert, so that when that time comes, we will be able to stand in righteousness before the Son of Man.